the wellness process has taken off, and people bring you up to me all the time.
Really?
And I think it's such a sign that you're in your lane.
This nervous system regulation work and figuring out my chronic pain thing definitely coincides with a lot of these changes. I really believe that once you get that in order, everything else starts to come with more ease, fall into place.
How did you discover the whole like mind-body connection stuff?
I started doing the journal speak practice, which for anyone listening that doesn't know is like a 20-minute journal dump bomb style. Like you are coming in hot, you're writing everything down that you're feeling from that day, and you're putting it all onto paper and ideally ripping it up. It's the stuff you would literally never want anyone to see or read.
We are both SSRI girlies.
I knew you were going to say
and
that.
I knew you knew. I felt it.
I was actually really depressed and I didn't even really realize it because it was kind of my baseline for my whole life. And I just kind of said, F it. Like I have nothing to lose. I'm, again, like rock bottom. And then it started to work.
Hey guys, it's Jordan Younger, your host of the Balanced Blonde Soul on Fire podcast. Here we go deep on all things astrology, awakening, wellness, motherhood, channeling, aliens, and so much more. We have deep conversations. We go to other realms. It's a lot of fun. So stick around. Let's dive on in. I cannot wait to connect. Your podcast is amazing.
Thank you.
It's one of the only podcasts that I've been listening to.
I am so honored coming from you.
Yeah, I get like hooked on podcasts. But also these days, I don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I don't know if it's because it feels a bit like work, because sometimes it's for research.
It's interesting you say that because I, since creating a podcast myself, have listened to way less podcasts. And I think it's because I can't help but when I'm listening, either try to be taking notes on someone's interview style or just like almost putting a work lens on it.
Totally.
Versus pleasure.
Totally. Well, I think we're both perfectionists.
Yeah.
Which I know we both talk
trying
about.
to better ourselves.
Because we can't just like listen and tune out. But I do listen to your podcast all the time. And
likewise.
There's not a single episode that I haven't loved.
I really, really appreciate that.
So I'm so happy to have you here.
Same.
We have so much in common.
I know.
And often, I feel like at least twice a week, I comment on your Instagram and I'm like, we're the same person.
I'm never not shocked by how similar we are.
I know. It's crazy. So tell our listeners a little about who you are, how you got started with your podcast, and all the things.
So I have been in the wellness space for a little over 10 years. I originally am from Michigan, and I came to New York to work for a job in finance. I simultaneously started the business Sweats in the City with my co-founder, Dale. And we were reviewing fitness studios and workouts, mostly like boutique studios in New York, for many years together. And that eventually became my full-time job. And actually just recently, I sort of moved on from Sweats in the City. I made this big transition. And that is because I started my own podcast about 1.5 years ago called The Wellness Process. And it really started as just an outlet for my kind of, I hate using the word woo-woo, but like my more alternative healing style modalities, things that I was interested in outside of just fitness, that I didn't really feel like I had a place for them to go. And it was really kind of what spearheaded it was this journey that I had with chronic pain. I had chronic pelvic pain, which I'm sure we'll get into, for about 5 years that was honestly debilitating. And I ended up discovering mind-body medicine, which essentially talks about how there's an emotional root to a lot of our chronic conditions, and it ended up healing my pain. And so I went from initially wanting to create a podcast, which actually, little side note, I did create one with someone else initially that was very women's health focused and very pain focused, and it was a totally different lens because I hadn't yet discovered the emotional root to my pain. I ended up leaving that, pivoting, creating my own, also simultaneously going through a breakup. And it was just like this kind of like storm of clearing and creating all at the same time. And so that's now landed me here where it's my full-time job. I can't believe it. I also just really believe that when you are being your authentic self, when you're following your gut, when you're making like those aligned action steps in your life, the universe really rewards you. And so I've felt this massive momentum in making these transitions, whether it's a breakup or leaving Sweats in the City or starting my own podcast, which was very nerve-wracking. I've never done like a business project on my own. I've always had a partner. And so it's sort of been this like very transitional last 1.5 years that has landed me here with you.
Yeah. Wow. That's so inspiring.
Thank
I
you.
saw that you did your big kind of announcement of transitioning from sweats in the city, I was like emotional on your behalf and Dale's behalf, because we've both been in this world for a long time with the
Yes.
social media, the fitness, the all the way back in the day. For me, it was 2013.
Wow.
For you, what was it, like 2015? So still so early.
Yeah.
And whenever you guys post the throwbacks of like the outfits back
Soul
then,
Cycle,
like
Ultracore.
that was our life. That was my life too.
Yeah.
And to make such a decision, such a leap is huge. So what was the catalyst for that?
So I think that, like I said, this chronic pain and sort of healing that and noticing how much people were responding, even just in my personal life, in bringing it up. I would be at a dinner and I would be like, yeah, I have this thing. And generally about 50% of the table would raise their hand and be like, same, tell me more about that. And so I really just felt this like greater purpose, this new kind of alignment with something different than what I had been doing. And I think it's very normal to be doing something for 10 years and feel like, okay, I need a bit of a change. I think in most people's jobs, they switch roles at a company or they climb the ladder. And of course, Dale and I evolved and changed and shifted our business, and we made it through COVID together, and there were so many things. But I was kind of in this place where I was like, I feel this pull to do something different. I feel kind of like I'm being pulled away from fitness, and like I don't want to be talking about it as much. And I think that as I started the wellness process and kind of creating reels and getting momentum and feeling just really ultimately very lit up by what I was putting out, I started realizing that the other stuff, reporting on fitness studios and talking about workouts just wasn't quite hitting in the same way for me. And once you've kind of done this level of work on yourself and you've really like honed in on your gut and that energy, it's very hard to ignore. So it wasn't
and when
like
you ignore it, it bleeds into every area of your life.
Exactly. And so, it wasn't necessarily one specific moment. It was sort of me taking stock continually, being like, okay, this is something I want to have a conversation with Dale about. I want to be honest with her that I'm feeling a little blocked up around content. Maybe there's a different direction I can take. We played around with it. And then ultimately I just decided, and by the way, that's not without a lot of planning, a lot of like getting into my financials and making sure that it was a secure decision. I'm definitely a planner. But yeah, it happened about a month ago, and it was in progress behind the scenes for a bit of time of Dale and I sort of tying off loose ends and figuring out who was going to do what. And making sure that she felt comfortable continuing the legacy of sweats, which I'm so happy that she's doing.
I know. So what did that conversation look like initially? I'm so curious because I'm the opposite of you, where I've always done my own thing. I've never had a co-host. I've never had a co-founder. I've never had like a partner in work, which as a reflector in human design is probably for the best.
So you're a reflector. Yes, I forget that. So rare.
And I would love to have someone to co-create with and someone to pick up the podcast when I've just had a baby or, that kind of thing. Totally. But I never have. So I'm so fascinated always by specifically friendships and like best friendships. I'm sure she was so understanding because I know her and she's amazing.
She's the best.
But yeah, I'm just so curious. How did you broach that topic, and was it emotional for you guys?
Yes, all of the above. I think that the emotions for us really hit once we announced. I think leading up, she and I both, obviously there were ups and downs of both of our emotions, and just it was a big change for both of us. And so we definitely felt it, but it wasn't until we really put it out there and started receiving feedback from other people, encouragement, things like that, that she and I both like cracked. But leading up to that, we had these organic conversations around content, and we were kind of trying to figure out our direction together. And I think I was starting to feel like I wasn't giving my 110% that I normally give. Like anything I do, work, personal life, I'm always 110, and I just felt myself not quite being there, and I didn't think that that was fair to her. She and I have always been very fair 50-50 partners. We've both sort of honed in on our unique skill sets and really leveraged them for all these years. And so we started having those conversations. Eventually that conversation led to, do you still want to be doing this? And it was right around 4th of July, so a couple of months ago, and she and I were both like, let's take the weekend and be with our families and friends and like just go inward and see how we feel. So we circled back like that Monday or Tuesday. And I basically then came to her and was like, I sat with this and I can't ignore what's happening in my gut right now. And I need to try doing this podcast solo and making it my full-time job. And she was incredibly understanding. I was incredibly, emotional about it. Obviously, it's a huge thing to walk away from. And ultimately, I was thrilled when she told me that she wanted to continue it. That wasn't something we had talked about, whether or not she wanted to. I wasn't sure if she wanted to just do her More Than Moms account and community there. And when she was like, I'm actually excited to run it, we got to a place where, it became now her blank canvas to work with rather than ours. And I think that for her, and I won't speak on her behalf, but just what I felt from her was that she now gets to make it exactly what this version of Dale wants to bring to the table, right? A little bit more of like fitness reporting and like the tell-all, giving the tea, the stuff that she's really good at and always has been. So we landed in that place where I was nervous and excited, she was nervous and excited, and then we announced and we were both like crying and on FaceTime together the entire day because it just kept coming in waves. It was like, it was grief, it was excitement, it was a new chapter, it was, oh my God, did we make a mistake? It was, we can't turn back now. All of it, if I'm being honest.
All of that makes total sense. And it's perfect, really, that she can take it in this direction because she's changed too. I mean, like,
of course,
as you said, and I think because influencers and content creators were a new breed, there's not a ton of people to look at who've been doing this for more than 10 years, 15 years maximum.
Totally.
And as you said, in other careers, people change what they do all the time. And then for someone like us, and we've built, based around our passions, usually our passions when we started, and those passions have evolved.
Right.
It's a very tricky thing. And I know a lot of content creators, myself included, who have had such waves of like guilt for, well, I created this dream job and what if I don't love it anymore?
Yeah.
So it's amazing that you've followed that inner ping and that gut feeling. Because yes, it's taking you in a fantastic direction and it just feels right.
Yes. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think that through all of these conversations, and, Dale and I have been through a lot together with Sweats. We've been doing it for 10 years. So whether it's her move to LA from New York and us kind of being together every day, normally before that, or going through COVID and being like, oh my God, all of our brand partners are canceling. We can't review gyms. Like, is our business going to go under? So much to her having 2 babies and me now getting engaged. And there's just been so many different things that we've sort of gone through together. But the through line has always been that the most important thing to us is our friendship. And we've always really maintained that as like the utmost important piece for us. And through these conversations, we were saying that to each other nonstop. We were like, okay, like if any kind of negotiation or anything around where the business stands starts to get in the way of our friendship, that's a problem. And so I think we did a really good job, and I credit Dale to this immensely because she is such an understanding, thoughtful, non-reactive person, and that's something that she's of course brought to the table the entire time of our business relationship together and friendship. So none of that was a surprise to me. She's always been incredible, but it really showed in those moments, and I'm really excited for her.
Yeah, it's all exciting. I'm excited for you too. The wellness process has taken off. I mean, just to see you start a year and a half ago, you said,
Yeah.
and then rise as you have on social media and the podcast itself is so inspiring. And people bring you up to me all the time.
Really?
They're like, yes, like other newer podcasters, people who started maybe around the same time as you will be like, well, there's this one girl and she grew really fast and all this stuff. I'm like, I think I know who you're talking about, and it's you. And everyone obviously speaks so highly of you.
Thank
you.
It's
incredible. And I think it's such a sign that you're in your lane.
Yes. And I think we all know what it feels like when we're not in our lane and we're kind of like doing the push-pull, willpower, muscle through thing. And it's not to say I was doing that with Sweats. I think that the timing of all of this worked out really beautifully, that like I started to feel it, we talked about it, we worked through it, and I moved into my own lane, if you will. But I think that of course that's happened. I'm sure a bunch of listeners are like, yeah, when I was in the wrong relationship, like there's so much that happens. And to be honest with you, Jordan, I think that kind of this nervous system regulation work and figuring out my chronic pain thing definitely coincides with a lot of these changes. I really believe that once you get that in order, everything else starts to kind of come with more ease, fall into place, be more authentically aligned. I think that that is really like a gateway of sorts.
It is. I couldn't agree more. It's a portal and like a vortex into a whole new you and a quantum leap, really, into a new timeline. I felt it feels like what you've done. When I was thinking about this episode last night before I went to sleep and just kind of feeling into your energy and what I wanted to talk about today, I was just thinking she has taken such a quantum leap. And I wonder if you feel that. Like, do you believe in that kind of stuff, the hopping timelines?
I do, and it's something I want to pick your brain on my podcast, because I'm sure you talk about it on yours a decent amount. I believe in it. I don't fully understand it, but I believe in it, and I believe that I'm in it, because even like I was going back to create a reel recently, and I was showing myself going through my breakup and like moving into my own apartment solo, and it was March 13th, 2024. And I got engaged March 14th, 2025.
Wow.
One year and a day later. Yeah. And I'm like, the momentum and speed at which I healed my chronic pain, got engaged, started a new business, like, and I don't say this to be like, yeah, I'm so amazing. I say it to be like, I'm not special. I really believe anyone can do this.
Absolutely. I know. I saw that reel, and it's powerful to look back on how much you can move through in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
So if anyone is feeling stuck, who's listening, just check out Elizabeth's account, because there's timeline hops on timeline hops, which we can definitely get into what that means and how it happens and all those details. But how did you discover the whole like mind-body connection stuff? Because that's something I feel like that's kind of like the basis of your podcast, is to help people understand that there's such a connection between the mind, the body, the soul. You're really into journal speak. Do you still do it?
Every single day.
You do? Okay, you're inspiring me.
I'm on day 220 of not missing a single day.
Oh my God. You're a consistent person. That is very,
not
very
always
inspiring.
with these kind of things, right? Like, you know, when you feel called, like, oh, I should be meditating, I should be doing this. I felt that so long with this kind of practice. And now it's like a complete non-negotiable. I think when you start a streak, especially if you're like a self-competitive perfectionist.
If I'm on a streak, I will never stop.
Never. I could be on the brink of death and I'd be doing my journal speak.
No, literally. I just told that to my husband because I haven't had alcohol in 8 years.
Wow.
And people ask me all the time, would you have a sip? Would you do this? Because it was really like a personal choice. It wasn't because of like being an addict. But I was just telling my husband, I'm not going to break an 8-year streak to have a sip of something I don't even want.
No.
Or even if I did want it. I am just a competitive with myself person. Like, because then I would have to say, because I'm also honest to a fault.
Yeah, you'd
then
be like, I'm one day without alcohol.
Yeah, I'd be like 8 years except for one sip, which I was doing for a while because I had one sip on my 30th birthday. And I would sometimes be like, yeah, it's been like 6 years except for one sip. And finally,
so honest,
I have let myself stop saying that because it was like a peer pressure situation and whatever. I didn't even want to do it.
It doesn't count.
However, your consistency is amazing.
Thank you.
So how did you discover this mind-body connection?
Okay, so funny enough, I was actually just writing a Substack about this because people were asking, like, how did you get into podcasting? And I was like, I think it's really important to mention that I started podcasting, and I'll get to Nicole. There's a purpose to this. And it was a failure, right? Like, I'm now a year and a half in, and it's this amazing thing, but it started with a failure. And it started with me being like, shit, is this not the right path for me? And that was because I started this podcast that I mentioned briefly with a co-host, and it was very like medical based. And actually she and I were constantly talking about like different modalities. We both had pelvic pain, and we were like, how do we get out of this? You know, we tried the Lyme stuff, the mold stuff, all of it. We tried it all. And she was like, I've heard of this woman, Nicole Sachs, and I will always credit her. This is exactly why it's like everything for a reason.
Everything falls into place.
She pointed me to Nicole Sachs. And it's one of those things, and I'm sure you've felt this with different modalities, where you're like, you just even hear a name and you're like, yep,
yes,
I'm in. It was just like a guttural yes. I didn't know much. I was just like, this is something I'm interested in. I looked at her Instagram. I looked at her podcast. I related to it. I bought her course. I bought her book. I blew through it. This is end of year 2023. Like New Year's Eve, I remember reading her book on the beach and like blowing through it. And a couple of things about it really spoke to me. One, the archetype of the person that has TMS, which is tension myoneural syndrome, which is essentially your body creating chronic pain and conditions because it would rather you feel the physical pain and different ailments that keep you really busy than the emotional root underneath. And the archetype of this TMS person is someone who is a perfectionist, type A, overachiever, really hard on themselves. And I was like, yep. And then I started to put it together. Like, there's a reason that I have this group of girlfriends that all has chronic stuff because we're all very similar. And I'm like, yes. Super interesting. I look at my mom. She's the same way as me. We tend to get the same, like, chronic stuff. And I started to be like, okay, I have literally tried everything. I've flown to different states. I've done a year course of antibiotics. I've done all the testing. And by the way, when you go looking, you will find things. So that was challenging because it's like, oh, you actually have parasites and Lyme and mold. And, you know, that wasn't necessarily what was causing my pelvic pain, which we can get more into. But I went head first. I started doing the journal speak practice, which for anyone listening that doesn't know is like a 20-minute journal dump bomb style. Like, you are coming in hot, you're writing everything down that you're feeling from that day or from past events, and you're putting it all onto paper and ideally ripping it up. It's the stuff you would literally never want anyone to see or read, the stuff that makes you feel like a bad person for thinking and feeling or doing. And the idea is, and Nicole describes this much better than me, but it is basically letting steam out of the valve. Because you have, if you think about it as this reservoir, right? There's the Lyme and the mold and all the things, but there's also the emotional piece. And I really believe that to be like the biggest piece. And so when that starts to expand, that's when the steam starts to blow out of the top, and that's when the symptoms start to arise. So in theory, if you get that emotional piece down, you can test positive for Lyme and mold and all the things, I believe, and be symptom-free and not have to identify as being in chronic pain. And so I really committed to the practice, and it started to work. And I was like, by the way, the last person on the planet to think that a journaling practice could heal my pain that I thought was definitely like embedded bacteria in my bladder, you know, because you go down all the rabbit holes, and I don't fault myself for that. I was in purely survival. I did all the crazy diets. I mean, my family thought I was insane. They're like, you can't eat anything. But I was literally just trying to survive.
Of course. And you would do anything to feel better.
Waking up, like, feeling like you have a UTI for 5 years in a row with no UTI showing on a test is one of the most mind-numbingly frustrating and disheartening things.
Anything sounds more uncomfortable.
It's actually...
That's horrible.
It's hell.
That's horrible.
So it lit a fire under me. And again, going back to, I believe there's a purpose in all of this. The podcast failure led me to this. Even getting the chronic pelvic pain, which started during COVID, which isn't a coincidence. Stress, emotions, fear is at the root of a lot of this. And so, yeah, I started doing it. I've been doing Journal Speak since December of 23. I started getting really serious about it. As I said, I'm about like 220 days of not missing a single day because I started to realize consistency with this really matters. And when you're a rigid perfectionist person, that can be challenging because you try to also like wear it loosely, like Nicole says. But with this, I can't wear it loosely. There's a few little practices in my life that I can't wear loosely, and I just have to be okay knowing that like I need to be a stickler about them because they work. And I really view it like my medicine. I mean, little things pop up here and there. Of course, I still feel pain. I'm still human. I'm not saying this is like curing the human condition, but I no longer feel attached to it at all. And if I get a little twingle of a bladder flare, I'm like, okay, got it. Something else is going on, and it's gone within the day.
Oh my God.
It's no longer...
Like something emotional.
Yes.
Wow.
Or even just something stressful. Like it can be small. It can be I'm packing for a trip and I'm short on time and I'm nervous about going to the airport or something, and I'll feel a little twinge of it. And I'm like, got it. The body's working exactly as it's supposed to.
Wow. And so the Journal Speak alone, you feel, has released that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a combo pack, right? It is... The first piece of it is understanding how mind-body connection works, right? I think understanding it and believing in it is a big piece, and that's huge. Very hard.
I agree. I feel like belief is the missing piece for so many people because, you have to believe.
You have
and if
to.
if you don't believe, nothing will work, whether it's journal speak or antibiotics or chemotherapy. Honestly, could be a little controversial, but you have to believe that you're able to heal.
Yes, and I think that belief is probably the hardest piece, especially for us who have become attached to different diagnoses. But that piece is really important. The journal speak is obviously really important. And then Nicole also talks about the third pillar of being kind of like having love and compassion for yourself, which at first I was like, yeah, I'm just going to like do the other ones and like just journal and like I don't need to do that.
We're the same.
And then I was like, oh, got it. I'm journaling every day and it's helping a little bit, but there's still something missing. And it's like, oh, that's because you talk shit to yourself all day.
Yeah.
And your body is fed up with you and it's over it.
Totally.
So that's been a really that's when that requires continued work, whether it's doing like a compassion meditation or finding a way to shift your lens, working with a therapist. Like there's a lot of different inputs to this work. It's not just as simple as journaling, and it takes time. It really does.
It does. And patience. Because so many people, myself included, often give up with a certain practice because it takes time. And I always tell people these kind of holistic, more alternative choices, they're more preventative than anything else. Like, yes, they can heal. Yes, they can reverse pain. But you're also preventing more pain in the future. And a lot of people don't have it in them to really think toward the future, to want to be preventative. Which is nobody's fault. It's just if you haven't lived in this state of chronic pain, you might not realize how important that is.
Yeah, and people that do this work, like you don't have to be currently suffering. I really think it's preventative. I think about all the future conditions I would have played whack-a-mole with had I not unlocked this, what I now feel like is a superpower. Totally. Like I walk around the world with this different lens now where I'm like, oh my God, first of all, so many people are suffering from TMS.
Yeah.
Almost everyone. In some way, whether it's back pain, neck pain, IBS, acne. Like, obviously, there are medical causes to a lot of these things, and I should have added in the beginning, like, it's very important to get everything checked to make sure you don't have something else going on. But this TMS thing applies to the people that have done all of that. Yes. And that are like, okay, I'm sick of feeling symptomatic despite normal labs or normal findings, or, you know, like you and I having Lyme and all the things show up on labs and trying all the things and realizing that like actually my nervous system is just out of whack.
So just continuing to make those choices, which again are preventative, because I feel like based off of what you were saying, you still were happy doing Sweats in the City. You're almost thinking 5 years ahead or 2 years ahead. Like, I want to focus on this, my new podcast, my who I am now. And I really do feel that's preventative for your symptoms for the future.
That's a really good way of looking at it. And I think a lot of people in my position, and I'll even go as far to say this goes to different relationships I've been in and things like that. Like, a lot of people would have stayed. A lot of people would choose comfort.
It is so hard
safety,
to make that choice.
The known. But it was preventative, because what I never wanted to do was get in a position where Dale and I started resenting each other, where I started having a new symptom because I was repressing a part of me that needed to be expressed.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing. It's very inspiring.
Thank you.
So something else that I've been so excited to talk to you about is we are both SSRI girlies.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know. I knew you knew. I felt it. You had an episode, I think it was called, like, I got cocky or something.
Yes.
And stopped taking your medication.
Yes.
Now, I did the same thing.
Of course.
Oh my God, I can't wait to talk to you about it. I wonder if we did it at the same time.
Probably.
I did it in October 2023. Maybe this was sooner than you.
I did it in July of 24.
Okay.
So you dabbled a little bit before me.
So that's why when I saw you post it, I was like, listening to this immediately, I relate to this. And there's so many people in our world of holistic health and mind-body connection that are very anti-medication and anti-SSRIs. And I was one of those people.
Me too.
Not for other people. Like, I would never judge my friends, my family members, totally supportive. But for me, I was like, no, never. I will never Band-Aid a symptom if my life depends on it. And then, I don't know what it was like for you. I'm excited to hear. But I got to such a dark place, such a rock bottom, that I was like, give me the medication yesterday. Like my
Yesterday.
life depends on this.
Yes.
And then when I tried to go off of it was because I was preparing to have another baby. And of course I was feeling better. I had been on the medicine for like 10 months. And
We get cocky.
Yeah. And my psychiatrist had said, take it for 12 months and then we can reassess. But I was like, no, I probably only needed 10 months. I am ready to have a baby. I don't want to take anything. And I went to Mexico for my birthday, and I accidentally left the prescription at home. Now, you can say maybe it was the universe that left the medication at home, because I was like, oh, well, I guess I wanted to wean off of it anyway.
Yes.
So 2 days in, 3 days in, didn't feel anything, felt very
like,
cocky,
I'm
very
great.
happy.
I don't need this.
4th day hits. Oh my God. It was like re-entering the state of panic that I had forgotten my body could even feel.
Me too.
Nervous system dysregulation, misery. And it was a good lesson for me, because then I chose to take it throughout my pregnancy and realized this isn't the worrisome thing that I thought it was. This feels correct.
Would you mind sharing what you're on?
Prozac.
Okay. So you took it through your second pregnancy.
Yeah.
So inspiring to hear, because it's something that is obviously like top of mind for me as I'm getting married soon. And
yeah, I know. It was my number one. I mean, we could talk all about this like anytime, but it was my number one fear for the whole 10 months of taking it before I thought I was going to wean off.
Yes.
Every therapy session, which I was having twice a week because I was living in full-blown panic attacks. Every therapy session, at least 45 minutes, was me being like, so do you think I can go off the medication for my pregnancy? Because this is my plan for when I want to get pregnant.
This is my vision.
She was always, I mean, God bless her, she was dedicated to not making the decision for me.
Yeah.
So she would just kind of listen. But then she would sometimes interject and say, just to remind you, I have so many clients, patients, whatever, who take far more than an SSRI in their pregnancy, and their kids are fine.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I don't know, I can't. This what I felt, it was so short term.
Yes.
And then, yeah, I had to get to that stage of believing my baby's going to be okay if I take this. And I couldn't just go into it with fear.
Yes.
I had to go into it with joy that I was taking this medicine. I know my baby's going to be okay.
And I'm actually better off and probably healthier for the baby, not in a state of panic.
Exactly. I had to go into it like that.
Yeah, of course.
And I get why people choose not to at the same time.
It's so personal. And I was like you, where I was, of course, supportive of other people taking it, but for me, I was like, oh, I don't even take Tylenol. Like,
Same.
How could I take something every day that I'm completely reliant on? There was also a weird fear around like a reliance on a medication, because I don't take anything else. I really take minimal supplements. Like, I'm sort of out of that like jamming a bunch of supplements down my throat era. And for me, it came about in a rock bottom of sorts. I have a pacemaker, and I had to get it replaced a couple years ago. And when they did that surgery, they did kind of a bad job of the replacement. I came out of the surgery and it was like sticking out of my chest. I could feel it even under the bandages. I was like, something's weird. And I had been really specific with them. I'm like, look, I know that I'm not your usual pacemaker demographic, but I'm young. I want to like be in a bathing suit and feel confident and be naked and all the things. Please try to like make sure it sits well. I got really lucky the first time where they like placed it really well. And I came out of the surgery and it was bad and it didn't get better. And everyone was like, it's going to be better. And I was like standing sideways and it was sticking out like a pack of cards. And I was like, this is just not only really unattractive, but very uncomfortable. Felt tight. I couldn't raise my arm. Anyway, I had to go back and get the surgery redone 2 weeks later, which was just a lot. It was, that whole period is kind of a blur to me. Like, it was just going under anesthesia again. And like, just, it was crazy. It was one of those things where you just have to put your head down and like get through it. But I came out of that, and the guy I was dating at the time, we'd been together for many years, so he like really understood me, and he was like, I think you need to consider medication. Like, your anxiety is so high, and you're so, like, I was actually really depressed, and I didn't even really realize it because it was kind of my baseline for my whole life. And so I will, again, I'm giving credit where it's due with all the people that have helped steer me, and he really encouraged me to do that. And I just kind of said, F it. Like, I have nothing to lose. I'm, again, like, rock bottom vibes. And then it started to work. And I was like, all of a sudden I was cooking again, and I was going to work events, and I was feeling not like I was counting down the minutes until it was over so I could go home and like be alone. And I was like, oh my God, I have been living in a state of low grade depression plus bouts of extreme anxiety and overthinking for my entire life. I'll also add, and I take Lexapro in case anybody's curious, I take 5 milligrams, which is a very small dose. I think anything less than 10 is like subclinical. I think it goes up as high as 20. So it's small, but that works for me. I'm very sensitive, and I never wanted to feel altered or numbed or anything like that. I still cry very easily, very sensitive person.
Same. And same with Prozac. I take 10 milligrams, which I know I've learned all of the SSRIs are very different in their dosing.
It's not apples to apples.
Because when I heard Zoloft and friends taking 100 milligrams, I was like, what? But it's all really different.
Yes.
So 10 is probably, I mean, I'm guessing it's like,
I think it's on par.
The same with what you're taking mostly, because
Exactly.
it's half of the starter dose for most people.
Yep.
And my husband makes fun of me. He's like, why do you always have to give that caveat? I'm like, because I'm sensitive. And
Yes.
so I want the other sensitive people to have the accurate information.
Me too, and it's not to downplay the importance of a higher dose for somebody else.
Totally.
By
It's
the
just
way,
you have to know your body.
all of us are so individual.
And it's your
share it-
metabolism.
Yes.
So you just have to try it and see.
Yes, and I think the reason that I like talking about the low dose is because I think, and I would never pressure literally anyone to go on medication. I am not like here sitting preaching medication. I've had people on Instagram be like, is this an ad for, is this a big pharma ad? And I'm like, girl.
People, listen to the podcast. Like, no.
I couldn't be further from that. I actually think it's quite juxtaposed to our usual position, which hopefully people find interesting, that we're not just like only on one track.
Yeah.
But I like to share about the low dose because I think, you know, if you're the person that's listening that's like, God, I've tried everything for my anxiety, depression, panic, but I've just been like, had this chip on my shoulder about an SSRI, like maybe a low dose is a good gateway or entry point. And by the way, I've had people listen to the podcast. I actually ran into a girl on the street and she was like, I heard your episode, I tried it, and I hated it. And I was like, that's super fair. And
yeah.
And again, it's super individual. This is not for everyone.
It's not. I mean, nothing's going to be one size fits all.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's people who listen to these who later come and say, I tried it and it saved my life.
Tons.
So,
and even just a low dose, sometimes a higher dose, but a low dose is a really good way to dip your toes in and see if you feel okay. And I will also say, for the listener that might be curious, I felt a little crappy the first couple of weeks of starting it, so don't be discouraged by that. I was really tired, and I was like out of it, and I was like, what am I supposed to be feeling?
Same.
And it was just a lot.
It's a lot. It's a big thing to get used to.
Yeah.
Because it is. I mean, it's chemical alteration, which I don't envy people who are just starting, because I hated that feeling. But I was also in such a dark place. It didn't really matter. I was like, well, you know, from one dark place to another challenging thing. And then it took, I mean, I don't know how long it took to start working, but 4 months later, I woke up and felt amazing.
There's a lot that goes into, I think, both of our recipes to feel good, and an SSRI isn't 100% of it. But I will say that, especially with my I Got Cocky episode where I had my like trying to go off of it, feeling like I was just good without it and it wasn't doing that much for me, it's doing a lot more than what I thought. And I think it was also important for me to try going off of it, see once I like recalibrated and got back to my baseline, and I was like, oh my God, this is that familiar darkness that I can even recall as like a child.
Yes, same. It makes you remember your childhood.
Yes. I was like, oh my God, this was my life for 30 years. And it actually made me feel really sad for her, because I'm like, she had no idea how effortful living was.
Exactly. I know. When I was living in that state of panic, it made me feel like I was 5 years old again. Yes. But that was a repressed memory. I had no idea that as a child I was so panicked and anxious.
Wow.
I, of course, thought everyone must feel this way.
Yeah, me too.
And people just deal with it and move on. And why do I care so much? And I think it's also, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, nervous system based. Because I think I was like so dysregulated for whatever reason, born that way.
Same.
So I've had misophonia, which is the intense issues with people chewing and intense. but it hurts on like a nervous system level
Oh my gosh.
since I was a kid. And all of
Wow.
this was coming back like full force. It's, yeah, I don't know.
Did
It's
you
just so
find
interesting.
that that was helpful for you to sort of